All right, luminaries, welcome, welcome. Today we are talking about our Venus retrograde in Leo, and it is time to reignite your pleasure. So today's episode is a replay of my amazing masterclass. Or not my amazing masterclass, but my amazing group. The community here is so wonderful in Star Powered Circle. And we are doing a masterclass today that you get to hear the replay of. And so today we're going to be talking all about the power of pleasure. And if you're like me, why it's so important to reshift our values and include creativity and play and joy so that we can power up our work. So, welcome, everybody.
Welcome to Star Powered Astrology for Changemakers. I'm Leslie Tagorda, your guide, a Hawaii-born Filipino-Jewish astrologer who loves navigating visionaries like you through the spiritual journey of your work so that you can be inspired to lead by your chart and become the luminary leader you were born to be.
So, first of all, Venus, right? Venus is the process to connect to the people and the resources that we need in our life, right? To not only survive, but to thrive, right? We know that Venus is the ruler of both Taurus and the ruler of Libra. In Taurus, she wants the things that like make her feel good, right? Abundance, prosperity, good food, good clothes, good housing, fancy candles, fancy soap, good cheese, good chocolate, right? Only the best. Venus is about quality. Okay. We can think about it as luxury, but like, let's just face it, it's quality. And where we have our values is where we invest in our quality, right? And then Venus in Libra is about people. It's about being likable. It's about having intimacy, having connection, having joy with other people. And so we can just think about Venus as connecting, attracting, magnetizing, and amplifying the people, Libra, and the resources, time, physical things, Taurus, time, money, physical things in Taurus that we need to thrive. So beautiful. So those of us that have this kind of strong Libra and strong Taurus or strong Venus, and yes, Heidi, also that Libra moon, you are going to feel it much more than just like the average Joe, because you have these strong Venusian energies. And as well as if we have our personal planets or angles in that place where Venus is going to be going retrograde. So when Venus is going direct, right, we are connecting, she is working her magic, attracting all of the things that she needs to thrive. But when she's going in reverse, we are here, we get to reshift, revalue, rethink, right? We're used to Mercury retrogrades, right? Because we have them 3 times a year. But Venus retrogrades, Venus is the one planet in our solar system that, from our perspective here on Earth, goes retrograde the least amount of time in her synodic cycle. That's the cycle between Venus and the sun. Venus is only going retrograde in her cycle for about 7 to 8% of the time. So that's why we hardly hear about any of these Venus retrogrades. But as a personal planet, it really, really impacts us at a deep level. That's why we can feel those Mercury retrogrades, we can feel those Mars retrogrades. And like the outer planet retrogrades, we can almost only feel them when they're stationed, when they're changing directions. Okay. So when generally in a Venus retrograde, we get to re-examine, right, our relationships, right? Whether this be our romantic relationships, or this might be our personal relationships, or our work relationships, or our familial relationships. It's all of those connections to people that we are re-examining because we have to reshift them, right? We're also re-evaluating your money, right? What are you spending your money on? What are you not spending your money on? And refining your values. Because ultimately, as a purpose driven business owner, like you all, like us, right, that we have to be making decisions based on our values, and our values shift. right? Maybe like things, we don't want things anymore. We want to like invest in other things. And then lastly, this is a time to reconnect to our community, right? Our people, our friends. Now, of course, in Leo, fire sign, right? About creativity and joy and working on the inner child and pleasure and play. When Venus is going retrograde in Leo, she's really asking you, have you been making time for all your passion and your play? Have you been valuing your joy, or have you been like bypassing your joy because, well, there's work to do? Oof. So ultimately, while this Venus in retrograde in Leo, it is all of our calls to shift our Venus connection and attraction to Leo energy, creativity, play, passion, and heart, to reveal your true value and joy and pleasure that you may have lost. Right? I know, like personally for me, I've been sharing with you some of the struggles that I've been going through. And I've been, this is like my third week in Hawaii, and I still haven't reclaimed my joy. I still haven't been making time to go to the beach. Like my family's like, let's go to the beach. And like, I'll go to the beach with them, but then I won't bring my bathing suit. And my son's like, Mom, why didn't you bring your bathing suit? And I'm like, oh yeah, I should have brought my bathing suit. Like me, like totally denying my joy. Jeff too in Hawaii. It's like, I don't want to get my hair wet because it's like too much like hassle, right? To get your hair dry and looking good again after it gets wet. Anybody else feel like that? So I'm like denying my joy because I don't want to get my hair wet. Right? Hair struggles are real, especially, I mean, I think for all of us, but especially for like the curly hair and like the humidity. Oh my goodness. Um, um, yes, curly hair struggles for sure. So I definitely want to answer everybody's like Venus retrograde questions, like their personal questions. So let's reserve that towards the end. So if you have some questions, like put it, write them down for now. And so the last time Venus was retrograde was back in December 2021, the change of December 21 to 2022, and Venus was in Capricorn, where we were shifting our connection to our like hustle, right? And our own expertise. But oof, I'm so glad we need this dose of joy and reconnecting. So remember a couple of days ago when we met for our new moon ceremony, and we were talking about that beautiful meditation where we were aligning all of our energetic centers, our chakras, and we were incorporating our intention of acceptance and the power of acceptance, and like noticing where we might have been in denial of things. We were looking at this place of acceptance, that what we wanted to plant, but we're also planting that seed and nourishing that seed with all of those emotions that we wanted to feel as we dropped in and as we started to receive that new moon intention. So today, I want us to expand on that feeling that we wanted to cultivate. Does everybody remember what feeling that they were cultivating with that new moon intention? I know I was speaking with Mickey earlier today before this session, and we were talking about hope, I believe, and knowing this idea of expansiveness. Anna says magic, that she wanted to feel that feeling of magic. What does that feeling of magic look like? For me, it was enthusiasm and like the expansiveness and freedom of enthusiasm. So if you can, if you have that word, that feeling that you wanted to cultivate plant it alongside your intention, if you could plant that into, put that into the chat, because today we're going to be taking that energy with this Venus retrograde, and we are going to be, after we finish talking more about this Venus retrograde and answering some of your questions, we are going to be doing a heart meditation where we are going to be igniting. Well, not so much igniting, but reigniting. Because to me, what this Venus retrograde is telling me is that our flame went out somewhere, right? When we have these retrogrades, it's not about reestablish, it's not about something new that's coming in. It's about reestablishing and reconnecting to something that we once had, what we once had that was joy, right? And so with Mylene, like Jen with connection, Mylene with power, Cecilia, boundaries, Floor, healing. What are the emotions that you want to feel with that healing? Maybe it's freedom, maybe it's spaciousness, maybe it's joy, maybe it's love, maybe it's gratitude. So I want us to start connecting to these kinds of Leo, right? We have the Leo new moon coming up. So you could see how like the astrology is really like these lay of like a lay of flowers or a lay of pearls, that it's connecting us from one theme to the next in all of this divine timing, because we're building up on all of these skills. Like all year we've been doing this, right? So Cancer acceptance and the feeling that we want to plant is now what we want to capture for this Venus retrograde, so that we can start to reshift our life and our work so that we are pointing to those values. Okay. So I want to talk. So keep on like thinking about that that elevated feeling that you want to plant in. But I want to start talking a little bit about pleasure, and I want to talk about like how much of us are actually in a place of creating pleasure on a regular basis in your life. And I'm gonna point. I'm gonna call out a little bit. I'm looking at you, Cecilia. Miss Pleasure Advocate, Pleasure Goddess. Would you mind sharing with us kind of like how you integrate pleasure into your day, to your life, to your work?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it's like, it's all about the little moments, right? Pleasure can feel so grand and feel so like put up on a pedestal a lot of the time, when it can be as simple as just like looking up at the clouds, which is one of my favorite things, and just noticing how the light is shining, or taking like a beat and having water, like little things like that I think can be built into the idea of pleasure without making it so so like grand, I guess. But of course, like, I'm here for all the grand stuff. Like, absolutely. Like, you want to take yourself out for a night on the town. Like a couple weeks ago, I decided, I was like, I'm gonna take a day and I'm gonna go watch The Little Mermaid for the third time. And like, and that's just what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna order food at the theater and just like chill and cry by myself in the back, like, and just feel all of those things. And then on a daily, I just trying to be very conscious of it too, I think helps. And then it sort of becomes second nature after a while. But I really feel like it is part of the like practice of it, right?
Yes. Ooh, I love everything that you said there, Cecilia. Like just thinking about like, I know that you're a sex educator also, right? And if we just like bring this idea of like our traditional sense of pleasure going like just straight for sex, right? And that like every time we have sex, we like have to have like this like mind altering, life changing like orgasm, right? And then we have all these high expectations of like trying to reach for like that big like dose of pleasure. And then more often than not, it's just like, right? Because our expectations are too high in terms of like what we're trying to create as like pleasure. But if we savor, right? And Cecilia with her like beautiful Taurus, right? We're savoring each of these moments and cultivating each piece of pleasure just by simply like looking out to the sky and like noticing the shapes of the leaves or the shadows or the sun. Or let's savor right now. Does everybody have a beverage next to them? Like grab your beverage and just like take a slow sip and savor the sensations. Mm. I'm drinking a matcha latte, and it's like so green and it's so beautiful. And the barista put like this beautiful like lotus leaf design on the top. It's like earthy, so teeny tiny sweet, and it's just a little bit warm. What did you guys notice as you were taking a sip of your beverage, enjoying, savoring, and cultivating pleasure in the moment? Like, we didn't have to work hard to cultivate that pleasure, right? We just simply made an intention that I'm going to savor this moment and notice what was happening. Michelle says the expectations that have been as the buzzkill for many pleasure things lately. Ooh, letting go of those expectations. I want to be pleasantly surprised now, right? We're choosing that savoring. We're choosing what we're going to experience. And April says, I do feel like the anticipation of something you're looking forward to feels so good, right? Like sometimes when you're planning for a trip and you're like, yay, I have something to look forward to. Sometimes it's as good as the same things as itself. Yeah, the anticipation, right? If we're coming back to this idea of sex, right? Just like, let's just talk about it. It's Leo, it's pleasure, right? This idea of sex, like sometimes, like at least for me and maybe for you too, is just like if there's like this like long day of just kind of like mental emotional foreplay, right, it can like lead up to something even so much better. And like, how often do we actually cultivate that for ourselves? How often do we actually make space and time? And it's not like we have to spend money for it. We just have to simply say that we're going to do this and we're going to make space and time for that. I love that. Mickey said as they were savoring their tea, it felt more minty. And Mylene also with some warm and comforting. Whew, I love this. Okay, we're done. We've learned everything we need to learn about Venus retrograde. But see, the idea, right, is that Cecilia reminded us that pleasure is something that we can savor and cultivate in a simple moment every day at any time. And as leaders and as change makers, in order to be vibrant and powerful and effective, we have to grow and glow up our life force. And this life force comes from the vitality of Leo and the vitality of pleasure and fun and creativity. And why pleasure is so important. I mean, I wrote this in the worksheet and I'm just going to repeat it here, but you already know this, and, singing to the choir here, right? Pleasure enhances your creativity, right? Pleasure and enjoyment, like, make our brains like give us little dopamine hits. Now, of course, we can overdo those dopamine hits. That's why we start to like doom scroll. That's why our kids, you can't get them off of their video games, right? So we'll notice the boundaries, the bumpers that we need to stay within to, so that we can, have this like regular and healthy and sustainable dopamine releases, not like going after it all the time, right? Because then that's where the expectation, that's where we start to like just crave. That's not good either. But that dopamine increases our pleasure, increases our ability to problem solve and do creative thinking and strategic thinking, and opens us up to new perspectives, new ideas, right? Just as we all individually took our sips, we noticed different things, right? Mickey noticed the mintiness. Adeline noticed her body appreciating the hydration. I noticed the contrast between the earthiness and the sweetness of the matcha. And like, what happens when we start to notice these little things even in our work? Oh my goodness, right? Of course, pleasure is such, we think about like fear and pleasure are our motivators. We don't need any more like fear mongering in the world. So why not have more motivation and drive from pleasure, right? When our work is pleasurable, then we actually want to show up for it. And if you are a business owner or a change maker, like you all are, we get to choose our work and what makes us happy. So I would love to see a raise of hands, like in general, not every day, not every minute, but in general, how many of us really love what we do in our work? I know I love what I do in my work. Yes, so many raisings of hands. Yes. Okay, who here is like, I don't know. I'm not sure yet if my business that I have created for myself is creating joy for me. Because sometimes in that contrast, where it hasn't been joyful, then you can say like, hey, I don't have to stay stuck here anymore. I can make a change. I can move it towards pleasure. I can tune into what I desire. And we'll be talking a little bit about hope a little bit later, because Mickey really inspired me about this idea of hope and how we can cultivate hope. And so we'll talk about that in a bit. Of course, pleasure increases that emotional well-being. And being in a funk for a little while, thank you, Saturn, all the little bits of pleasure. Again, always a choice, as Mylene says, the power of choice, that we get to cultivate this. Of course, if we are happy, people want to be around us, right? And that is, of course, clients, our family, our friends, right? It's not that we have to be happy all the time. We are whole people. But if in general, like our overall presence is engaging and happy and inspiring because we prioritize our own joy and pleasure, because we're so passionate about what we do, this then encourages more people. It acts as a magnet, right? Just like, not that other people are like flies, but when you think at nighttime, all of like the bugs go towards the light, right? If we are the light, things, we're attracting it more. And of course, if we're working hard, we also have to play hard. So pleasure, I know we don't have to like put it over the head, but it's just a reminder of why pleasure is so important in our work and our life. And we can start to notice during this Venus retrograde where things are not pleasurable, or where we're not having fun, or where things feel like a drag, or where people feel like a drag, or where money feels heavy, like it's not bringing in that joy and light. Right? When we think about money, because it's Venus, it's abundance, it's resources, and money as energy, right? If we're spending our money, where are we spending that money in? Are we spending our money in things that bring us joy, right? If that $8 bar of soap, that $20 bar of soap, I've bought $20 bars of soap, I have to say, brings me joy, that I'm going to buy it and I'm going to use it and I'm going to hide it from my family, because then they're going to use it and they're just going to leave it in the water and they're going to melt it. And I'm like, don't use my soap. That's my sacred soap, right? But I also love like the $1 soap. I do love Dove, like the original Dove. There is something about that Dove smell that is like so nostalgic for me. And so you put your money where your values are. What brings you happiness and joy? Like, do not deny yourself these little pleasures. Okay. And so, of course, you already know the opposite. When you don't value your pleasure, when you're not making tiny moments in your day to savor, when you're not making larger anticipations with planning out your dreams, like with a vision board or like a vacation plan, right? When you're not valuing your pleasure, no motivation. And Mickey, if you wouldn't mind, I would love for you to share a little bit on that, because we had a huge opening around that. I think Venus was there for us. When we don't value pleasure, burnout, right? We've all been there. Limited creativity, less engagement, missed opportunities. Right? We can all resonate. So, Mickey, do you mind sharing a little bit about what we discussed earlier about your accessing hope?
Yeah. So, I have been feeling hopeless because I had this dream to live by salty water, and I feel like I've been working hard to it, but then I was like just feeling hopeless. And so like we were talking about how then I can create a vision board, create how I want to feel when I get to the water, instead of just focusing on all the details and how I'm going to get there, focus on the feeling of when I am there and on my way there. And what is it going to smell like? What is it going to what was the one that you said? It wasn't the smell, but the music, like what song might be playing that inspires me, and just all of your senses, hitting all of the senses and creating what that is all going to feel like in all of those areas. And I had not been doing that. I've been just focusing on all the things I have to do to get there and the money I have to save and what coast am I going to be on? Just like getting into all those details. And it was just a really good reminder, kind of like the little kid who knows they want the apple. They don't know how they're going to get the apple off the counter, but they're going to get that apple. They just go for the apple. And that's what it reminded me of, Leslie telling me to just go for the apple. Don't worry about all the other stuff that will come in and support me as I can tune into what I want to be feeling and how that's going to feel.
Oh, thank you so much, Mickey, for sharing that. Because before our Venus Retrograde Masterclass, Mickey and I had met for her solar return reading. And, you know, Mickey has been going through so much in her personal life. But she has, you know, come across this crossing point of stepping into a new cycle. And what we discovered was that in this previous cycle, Mickey felt really hopeless, right? And so when we're feeling hopeless, we can't even ask for our desires. We can't even have this want because we have just this sense of nothingness, of like hopelessness. And so as we're kind of opening up like what this new cycle is going to look like for Mickey, we just turned hopelessness on its head for hope. And how are we going to bypass, like these are the parts that we need to bypass, all of like the how are we going to do it, like where's this money going to come from, like all of these questions that we're not here to answer, that universe can answer for us once we decide what we want. Once we decide what we want, that's the intention, and how we're going to feel when we have that, and then marry it together. And that's what we've been doing with those new moon intentions. And that's what we're going to be doing a little bit more with this Venus. So let's talk a little bit about the astrology of Venus. And let me share my screen. I forgot to share my screen with you earlier. Can you all see this Venus retrograde worksheet? So we're going to get into a little bit of the astrology of this Venus retrograde in Leo. So we know, again, Leo, the archetype of confidence, the archetype of shining brightly, the archetype of creativity, pleasure, joy, being royal, being the queen, right? Being a royal, treating ourselves as royalty. And if we think about this idea in our work to shine brighter with confidence, it's not just us. We can take that Leo energy, and as we shine brightly, as we lead by example, we can spark others to shine. Like a flame doesn't lose its energy by sparking somebody else's. And to me, I love this idea of Leo sparking in others. But of course, if our glow, if our inner fire, if our inner spark, i.e. our pleasure, is dull, if it's almost going out, then how are we going to spark it in others? Okay, so this Venus retrograde, it's been in the shadow zone already since the middle of June, June 19th, and the shadow zone started at Leo of 12 degrees. Currently today, Venus is at 28 degrees of Leo right before it goes into Virgo. And then on Sunday, it's going to hit reverse. It's going to stay at 28 degrees for just a couple of more days. It's going to come back into reverse at that midpoint of the Venus retrograde where the Sun and Venus are conjunct, will be on August 13th. Okay, so for the important degrees for us to remember with this Venus retrograde are the Leo of 28 degrees, because that's where it's going to turn around, all the way back to Leo of 12 degrees, right? That's where it's going to stop and it's going to turn back around and go forward again. And then right in the middle, Leo of 20 degrees, because that is where Venus will meet up with the Sun at that midpoint, the combust. this little slice of 16 degrees. Is that right? 16 degrees. Did I do my math right? Thank you. Basic math. 16 degrees of Leo is where Venus is going to be highlighting. She's already passed by once, going direct. Now in retrograde, she's going to pass by a second time, highlighting, and then a third time when Venus goes direct. And at this time, or at the time of this Venus retrograde, the first thing that Venus retrograde is going to do is she's going to create a finger of God, also known as the Yod, with the sextile between Neptune and Pluto. So you can see Venus here at 28 degrees, all of these Leo energies right now. And you can see these brown lines in conjuncts to Neptune at Pisces of 27 degrees and Pluto at 29 degrees. So the Pluto-Neptune sextile is in pretty much over. Like, we experienced the majority of the sextile between Pluto and Neptune over the last couple of years, when Pluto was, in 2020, 2021, 2022 is when we were really feeling that kind of sextile. But this is still in effect with this, with Venus here. So you can kind of see the sextile, this green line between Pluto and Neptune, and how they're both pointing to Venus, basically the midpoint between Venus, between Pluto and Neptune. Neptune, Pluto, and Venus are really saying or asking you to consider and to reshift and realign how your pleasure connects you to your divinity, that's Neptune, and your power, that's Pluto. So I want you to remember this as kind of like the theme of like why we're really doing this work. And then as Venus moves into later parts of earlier parts, of Leo 19 degrees, I believe, is when she's going to trine with Chiron, right? So cultivating the value in your past hurts, right? Like really noticing and embodying that what you can't heal in yourself is what you're here to heal in others. So potent. And valuing that, not just noticing that, but valuing it. Just as I'm sure that Chiron valued his ability to heal, even though he couldn't heal himself. Okay. And then Venus will then square with Uranus in Taurus, where that's asking us to choose our passions, reawaken them, and then later in the cycle, then squaring off with Jupiter and Taurus. So Jupiter and Taurus embodying and expanding on that pleasure. I find it so beautiful that even chronologically, these events happen together. On social media, on Instagram, Jeff put together these amazing slides that have the journaling questions, and there's journaling questions at the end of this worksheet for everybody here too. So you can explore these questions even more deeply. And so when we think about what we're going to reignite in our pleasure, right? We're going to re-examine our relationships. Are they joyful? Are they not joyful? Do we need them in our lives, or can we let them go? It is okay to let go of people in your life if they are not bringing you joy. I mean, unless they're your children. But your children do bring you joy sometimes, more often than not, and love. And then you are here to reevaluate, right? And this part, reevaluating, I put here, reevaluate your attraction by amping up your flare, right? So this is when Cecilia was talking about, like, every once in a while, you need to glam yourself up and take yourself out on a date, you know? Put on whatever makes you feel good, get noticed, right? Take that compliment from like that 20-year-old dude. Like, why are you complimenting me? I'm old enough to be your mother. I'll take it, fine, I'll take it. Refine your values of play, fun, and creativity. I know, like, part of, Jeff and I have been working in our work, we've been really trying to amp up our social media again because it's kind of lost some steam. But what I really lost in that was like I wasn't having fun with it, right? They were not fun. They were not entertaining. They were not exciting. And so when we can make our posts more exciting and more engaging, then that like amps everything up. Even if I'm talking about some hard things, because I've still been talking about hard things in my social media posts. But still trying to bring the light to them, the inspiration. And then of course, reconnecting to your heart-centered communities, right? So you know, because you love astrology and you know how to read your natal chart, that you need to find the house that occupies that portion of Leo, 28 degrees to 12 degrees. And if there's a question to which house it is, like if that area spans a couple of houses, you're giving priority to the house that has that cusp line, that rulership, okay? And that by house, Venus retrograde tells you where you need to reignite your pleasure in your life and your work. Right. So for me, it's third house. So guess what? Yeah, we've been amping up our marketing. Jeff and Jamira have been going crazy because I'm like, do this, do this, do this, do this. We've been doing all kinds of, we've been shifting so many things on our website and our marketing. And it feels really, really good to be able to shift these things in a certain way. And so even, you know, like if you have an opt-in that has maybe like lost its steam or something like that, this would be an amazing time to just reevaluate it and make just like little changes. Like Cecilia reminded us earlier, right? We don't have to do like this massive overhaul. We don't have to like be like aiming for like the big O. We can simply just like look at little pieces and say like, oh, that word doesn't fit me anymore, or I want to change out that graphic, or I want to change out this phrase. Just like little things. Yes, Cecilia, take the pressure off. There's nothing like kryptonite to pleasure as pressure. Well, I don't know. That maybe sometimes people need some pressure. Sorry, I'm going there today because, well, it's Venus and Leo. Jeff says we found so many great gems from years and years of content. Yeah, absolutely. Like part of my Saturnian years, like I went back through all of our social media posts and was just like looking at what performed well. I'm like, oh, look at all these gems. Like we had so much good stuff. And then like reposting them, but like with different visuals. And then people are like, oh, more of these, please. Like, are there more of these? I'm like, yeah, like from 2 years ago, they're in there. So this is like perfect, right? Ishal says, I got rid of a bunch of old clothes. I let go of all, oh, beautiful. Releasing all that weight. And with COVID, I didn't need a lot of clothes. And after my fall, I've gained weight. So, you know, you have no idea what your style is now. Aries is your style, Ishal. Aries rising. Maybe that is your practice for this Venus retrograde, is to just go out and accept your body as it is here and now, and buy something that makes your body feel delightful here and now. Right? Cat, Venus is in my 6th house. So health, yeah. So 6th house, like daily practices, Kat. Like, are you bringing in pleasure daily? Are you having fun daily? And I know, Kat, you like to have a lot of fun. So I don't think that that's going to be too much of a stretch. But also in your systems, like if you're thinking about the systems in your businesses, and I know you, Kat, like you have like all of your processes, like with your clients and like your sales processes and your like onboarding and your offboarding, like where can you amp up a little bit more fun in there? Maybe a couple of memes in your onboardings, or some like, you know, animated GIFs or something like that, right? Yeah, name. I love how sex has definitely been like this part of you. And so this is really cultivating, maybe if sex has been about a power play for you, maybe making it a pleasure play. I'm just guessing, right? But you know, with all your Scorpio, all that, or the 8th house and the Scorpio and that Virgo, right? Like that the eighth house can really be overpowering and not having the enjoyment of sex, even if there's a lot of sex going on. Jen says, learn today that Madonna has fire energies, and all this talk of pleasure reminds me of Madonna's like a virgin. She has a story for my 8-year-old, my youngest, Leo Moonchild, activating and returning to this playful, bold, visible drama inner child performance. Yes. And so like, how can, oh wait, this is also on the Bangles energy that followed me in taking the stage between our living room and dining room, singing and choreography to the eternal flame. Okay, so that is so good. Jen, thank you so much for sharing, right? So like if we can cultivate in this Venus retrograde, that exuberance that we felt as an 8-year-old, and I love that the 8-year-old came up because Venus has 8-year cycles, right? So there is significance in that 8 years. So what were you doing for fun at 8 years old when nobody else was watching? Right? And I say when nobody else was watching was because this is what you did for yourself. And that Bangle song, Eternal Flame, is like our mantra to reignite that eternal flame. It doesn't go completely out, but it gets snuffed, right? To like a little dull smolder. So how can we reignite that? Ooh, Kat, what a quiz. Quizzes are so much fun. Yes, like a little sex kitten quiz. Yeah, Kat and Cecilia, you guys have to get together sometime because Kat has a boudoir photography business, and Cecilia does pleasure and sexual education. So that would be super fun for you to coordinate sometime and collaborate. I mean, based on your advice, I focus on sex without needing the emotional connection, and it has been great. Awesome, right? Maybe that sex is like supposed to teach you to put your body first, to put your pleasure first, especially from, you know, the story that you shared about your upbringing and stuff where pleasure was really all but denied. So that's been amazing for you to reclaim your sexual power. What I would like to do right now is I want to answer some of the questions that we have for people in Star Powered. Kat, do you have a question?
I do. I have a couple minutes here before somebody walks in, but my question is this. So Venus is in Libra. No, Venus is in the 6th house on 0 degrees of Scorpio. And my Scorpio, I don't know all these words, it's kind of locked down. The house is locked down. What is that called when the like to access all my Scorpio? Yeah.
Intercepted, yeah.
Access all my Scorpio powers, I have to be more Libra.
Yes,
right?
More connected. Yes. So your Venus is definitely being activated. You're correct. Your Venus is being activated because of your Leo, your Libra sun. And so to me, this is about because your Venus is in Scorpio, there's this like deep magnetism. And I'm wondering, I'm sorry to talk so much about sex, but I'm wondering if you're getting sex on a daily basis. I feel like that is something that needs to come forward right now. I don't know, I'm just hearing that call. I know that's a lot of work and effort.
Yeah, I do not, but that's for another podcast.
But your Venus retrograde is happening at your 4th house, and it's activating also your natal Saturn at 14 degrees of Leo. So you have Leo at your IC at your Imam Coeli, and so for you, this is really bringing pleasure and joy back at home and in your sacred spaces.
Very cool. And then did I see something about Pluto out there, or am I confusing something?
Pluto and Neptune are forming a yod, a finger of God, with transiting Venus retrograde. And so it's leaving the imprint for this entire Venus retrograde, how pleasure ignites our divinity and our power.
Very good. Because I know that Pluto is right next to my Libra sun. So I felt like there was something super powerful going on there too.
Yes, your Pluto felt it for sure.
Yay. Thanks so much.
You're welcome, Kat. Thanks for asking your question.
Hi. So it feels like I have two strong Venus placements, or Venus and Leo retrogrades, and I'm wondering if I should pay attention to both or either. So I have Pluto in like within 10-degree orb in Libra to my midheaven,
Mhm.
and then I also have Jupiter 26 degrees of Leo in the 8th house. So am I paying attention to both of those?
Let's see. I'm taking a look at your chart. So Leo, okay, let me find your Venus first. Your Venus
It's in Virgo.
is in Virgo. It's very close to your sun. So I would say you're going to feel this Venus retrograde very intimately. And this Venus retrograde is definitely traversing between your 8th house as well as your 4th house, and also on top of your Jupiter, right?
Mm.
And so I would say that you're also like feeling just this this attraction, like you're magnetic, like you walk down the street and people are like, oh, who's this? Like, hello. Do you get the sense of that?
I'm not sure. I definitely have been feeling it's the summer and it's hot, so I'm wearing lots of crop tops and just like walking through the city and enjoying it. So, but yeah, I think I've just been a little bit too busy to notice. But yeah, I've been feeling it. I've been feeling myself. Like,
Yeah, I mean, the Jupiter, because you have Jupiter and Leo involved right there, right? It's like whatever feeling you are cultivating or you're having is going to expand. So you might as well choose to savor and cultivate the feelings that we want to have because you have that Jupiter. And so 8th house, just like power, deep healing. And so take this time, take these dates that you're going on for fun and use them as healing for you, deep healing.
yeah, I love the conversation around power. Like I take these sacred sexuality classes, and there's one today specifically on power, and it just felt really energizing to think about the choices that we can make and where we can focus our energy. So that feels resonant.
Oh, I love that so much. Ishel says that they noticed the black moon Lilith in late Leo. So that sounds like a potent cultural shift for women too. Oh my goodness. Yes, please. Like, let's take that. Right? That's part of, if we can like value women, value the power of women, value the power of women's sexuality and pleasure, like how much would that come back for like the healing of the divine mother, for that Cancer archetype that we've been planting the seeds for. I love that. One of the things that Aname was saying about this idea of power, oh my gosh, I forgot what you said. There was something that sparked. If it comes back, I'll come back to it.
Just being able to like have a choice about where our energy is. And
yes, that choice and like that savoring of our energy. And so I want you to remember like that. What does power feel like for you? Right? Because that is, I think, the key for you to plant that we're going to ignite in our hearts today for this Mercury retrograde. I just read in the chat Venus retrograde. Yes, Mercury is in Leo today. Venus and Mercury will cross paths. They'll cross streams. Don't cross the streams. They're going to cross streams just a little bit. And the moon, indeed, the new moon. So beautiful. All of it in Leo today. We have a very big Leo day. All right. So anybody have other questions before we head into our meditation, our heart ignition? Yes, Jen, please.
Hey, Leslie. Thank you. I just wanted to ask, I have a midheaven circumstance as well. And I just, my Leo is there in midheaven, but it's outside of the 12 degrees, but I have it's going to cross my Saturn. So I'd love to know more about like where and how that will be. Yeah. Just like something to like be tuned into, because it'll be at my Saturn's at 22 degrees.
Yes. So Venus and Saturn, right? The Venus retrograde on Saturn is really like, is is really having you focus on your expertise, your boundaries, your your mastery, right? So one thing, because if we have Saturn in Leo, we are here to learn how to have fun. We are here to master enjoyment, right? And so Venus reshifting is saying like, okay, well, Jen, did you notice the value that you cultivated when you were dancing your ass off to Eternal Flame? And how you could move mountains within, like, say, like a corporate training session or facilitation by playing that song as an anthem, right? And that power of joy and play and dance as a tool is really saying like Venus is like, okay, Jen, can you see all of the value that you thought you were just like wasting time having fun, but no, you are adding value. So for those of us that have that Saturn in Leo, and I know there's a couple of us out here, is really starting to value that fun that you are here to master, right? And Heidi Garcia, right? No wonder I couldn't get any work done. My Leo sun and moon just wanted to have fun. And now realizing that I was denying myself and not listening, right? So that's another beautiful thing, right? Because now we're noticing and we're bringing awareness. Venus retrograde is doing her job, because only when we notice and have awareness can then we choose and make something different, right? So does that answer your question, Jen? Oh,
It does. The other curiosity I have is, I know that you've like spoken a little bit in about fixed placements, but like my moon is at 19 of Aquarius. And so I'm like, when it's in that opposition, I just want to like be conscious of like how I'm showing up, because my fire, I know, can go into sacred rage territory, and I'd like to be in that playful energy you just described. So can you speak a little bit into the fixed cross and the fixed notion?
yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. So, for the fixed signs, Aquarius, Taurus, Leo, and Scorpio, if we have any natal placements within those, I'm shaking. If we have any natal placements within that slice between 28 degrees and 12 degrees, Venus retrograde will definitely be opposing and squaring off and really amping it things up, right? So for you, you mentioned that kind of like the sacred rage, right? And so for the opposition, so for the Aquarius energies, it's really noticing and choosing like, okay, I'm angry now. How can I choose to work with this energy? Because anger can be very constructive, and there's a lot of creativity that can come with that anger if we don't let it like over consume us. And then like, for me, like I'll just like lose my head and I just like scream. Right. But yeah, I the opposition, choosing your joy and those squares is really like activating and integrating that joy. Right. And then for those of us that have Aries, Sagittarius, and Leo placements for the fire trine that is working, everything is supported right now. Like if you have a lot of fire energies, like really feel into how joy and pleasure and creativity are here and now, and really valuing them. All right, my friend.
I love that. Thank you for that reminder, because I just realized that my Neptune is in Sagittarius and it's at 13 degrees. So there will be some beautiful support from that revolutionary aspect that or like dreaming aspect that we talk about.
For sure. I think so many of us, will have Neptune being triggered, and Neptune is already in the signature of it, right? So again, a reminder that pleasure is, accesses your divinity, right? Your unity, your connection to all. I thank you, Jen, for asking those questions, because I forgot to talk about those personalizations. Of course, there's house personalizations, right? I'll just leave that on social media because I want to get to our heart meditation. Okay. So if you can, I want you to have your candle and your lighter somewhere close by, right? And what we're going to be doing, we're just going to do a short meditation. And before we start that meditation, I want you to think about this idea of joy. And what does joy feel like for you? right? Does joy feel like expansiveness or freedom or hope? Maybe it's enthusiasm or excitement. Or maybe there's not even a word. Maybe it's like the warmth of the sun on your cheeks or your toes in the warm sand as like the cool ocean waves come across them. What does joy feel like? Why don't you just choose a word? Or, well, we have that word joy, but I want you to choose a feeling word that goes into that joy. For me, I'm going to choose enthusiasm because that's the word that I've been working with since the new moon in Cancer to cultivate. And so today we're going to plant those seeds of joy for this Venus retrograde because that joy and that pleasure, that joy is going to reignite the pleasure. And that pleasure is going to then connect us to our divinity and our power. And we're placing this into our heart center because our heart center has its own magnetism. It already has its own electromagnetism, and it's putting forth a frequency. And it's absorbing a frequency in this beautiful, infinite movement. And today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be shifting that energy of our heart into this place of joy. And we're going to be amplifying and tuning and turning up the volume of that joy in our heart so that every day we decide, as Cecilia reminded us, to savor a little bit of pleasure every day, that we're going to tune in and we're going to remember and go, oh yeah, I have that joy already ignited in my heart. So I want you to plant your feet firmly in the ground. I want you again to tilt your pelvis forward so that your pubic bone is facing down. And then I want you to lean back just a little bit so you get that curve in your back. And as soon as you get that curve in your back, it's going to straighten up the rest of your spine so that you can sit up straightly. And I want you to move your ears a little bit back so you're straightening out your neck and you're aligning your ears with the backs of your shoulders so that your neck is straight. You'll lift your chin up just a little bit. So now you have this beautiful alignment. And you're going to take a deep breath. You're going to feel your breath enter in from 18 inches above your head. Take a deep breath. It's going to go through the crown of your head. It's going to go through your third eye. It's going down into your throat, going down into your heart, going down into your solar plexus, your sacral, and your root chakra. Take another deep breath, a little bit faster this time, all the way down to your root. And then back up again at your heart. You're going to plant those seeds into your heart. I want you to feel that energy in your heart. Maybe you want to put a hand or both of your hands over your heart center. And I want you to say the word joy. You can say the word joy out loud. You can say the word joy in your mind's eye. I want you to feel that joy. If you were with me in the new moon ceremony and you planted that little seed there, go back to that little seed. Right? I'm going to nourish it now with even more joy. Think of joy as like water, or even a clear, effervescent water, or maybe just actually think of this joy as the sun, these beams of golden light that your little seed needs to sprout. The seed is already sprouted since the new moon. So it's growing happily and the leaves are facing the sun, feeling the warmth of the sun's radiance on its leaves. And that sun, that joy, is shining even brighter on that little tender sprout. You feel that joy emanating in your heart. So I want you to imagine one of those little sunbeams. And I want you to imagine one of those sunbeams that has that word, what joy feels like for you. Maybe joy feels like hope or freedom or expansiveness or limitless possibilities. For me, joy feels like enthusiasm, excitement of life. Plant that word, that feeling, into one of those little rays, those golden sunlit rays, and shine those light, those warming, joyful, pleasurable rays onto that heart center. Breathe a little air into it, because as you breathe your air into it, that fire ignites. It's not a fire that consumes, it's a fire that glows and energizes. It's a fire that already feeds that inner flame of your heart. Now, take another breath, and I want you to hold your breath into your heart center. And I want you to imagine this field, the electromagnetic field of your heart, emanating out that word of joy. Pushing out that feeling. For me, that feeling of enthusiasm. Maybe for you, it's a feeling of hope, feeling of trust, feeling of contentment. Take it in another breath. And as you take in that breath, feel that energy expand even further in front of your heart, behind your heart. As you open up and crack open behind your heart, your shoulders lift up. Feel like to the sides of your heart. And you feel this feeling, this energy radiating out, but you also feel this energy radiating in. Take one last deep breath. And I want you to feel that expansive energy of that feeling that you want to cultivate for this Venus retrograde. I want you to feel it expanding out into the universe, expanding so far out that it comes right back to you in a perfect, infinite cycle. The more of this feeling of joy that you emanate out and push out into the world, radiate out into the world, the more it comes reflected back to you. Take one last clearing breath. Bring yourself back into the present moment. You can slowly open your eyes. I want you to fix your gaze onto that candle. And I want you to light that candle. As you light this candle, I want you to set the intention. Your intention is that in this Venus retrograde cycle, you reignite your pleasure so that you can connect to your divinity and your power. As you look at this candle and this light, the ignition of that fire glowing, let it be a reminder to you of this feeling that you want to cultivate of joy. Let it be a reminder that you get to choose these little moments anytime you want, every day, every minute, every hour. Let this flame remind you of this feeling that you want to cultivate. Let this flame remind you that this feeling is already planted in your heart. Let this flame remind you that at any time, you can radiate out this feeling with wonder, appreciation, and gratitude. Such a powerful Venus retrograde that we get to experience this summer. May you all reignite your passion, your joy, your creativity, and your pleasure. Welcome back. So you can choose to let the candle burn safely for a little while. And then as you burn it out, say a little praise, a little intention that just because you're blowing out this candle for now, that this eternal flame lives on in your heart. Let it be a reminder that every moment you need a little bit of pleasure. You can simply choose pleasure by cultivating, savoring a moment in time. All right, my friends, I hope you had a beautiful Venus retrograde. If you're listening as the replay on the podcast or in Star Powered Circle, thank you so much.
As a human design projector, my energy shines more brightly because of people like you who share my work. If you enjoy this podcast and want to help build a movement of innovative astrology and leadership and spark the intuitive revolution, please rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts, or better yet, share this podcast with your change-making besties. We will all shine brighter together as we create the future we want to see.